Hey everybody, welcome to Wednesday. Okay, so this is not gonna have spoilers in it. This was gonna be my big recap Last of Us 2 spoilers everything video. That's gonna have to wait. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow, maybe I'll push it to next week. But something's come up and I've decided to bump that because I think this is actually important. I don't say this often. I tend to like video games because in the grand scheme of things, who gives a shit? Uh, I like that space. My time in like news talk radio made me realize I don't want to cover the grisly realities of the crime beat for a living. I'm something of a political wonk, but that's more of an extension of kind of my women stuff in games. Unfortunately, when you're an ambassador for video games, you've got to really be up on this political stuff. But I like games. I like the fact that, people can completely disagree on a game. If everybody's cool about it, the world doesn't have to end. You can still hang out. It doesn't matter if two people don't like the same games. But we're deviating from that today. I actually think this is really important, and it may require some stuff that gets this video demonetized. So help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K. YouTube's rules are utterly Puritan when it comes to frank discussions of sex and sexuality. I'm a sex positive feminist, so it gets me into trouble sometimes. The central question we are dealing with today is the assertion, and I was holding off on talking about this because I was hoping Feminist Frequency would cover it based on the tweet they put out. If it's okay to see the problematic elements of things you enjoy, but they didn't. They dodged it. They talked about the violence on their podcast instead of really. Actually, no, they didn't. They blew this one. They missed a real opportunity. And by which I am talking about this controversy, the rampant body shaming of Abby in The Last of Us Part 2 shows gamers still can't accept a realistic female lead. Now, in order for this to be true, two conditions must be met here, right? Abby is a realistic portrayal of women. A woman. And gamers have a problem with that. Gamers can't handle the realism. Okay? That's what I'm going to deal with today. Now, on the Feminist Frequency podcast that I recommended yesterday, because I thought it was worth listening, they only really touched on Carolyn Petit and Anita Sarkeesian both agreed that Abby was attractive. Anita Sarkeesian pointed out that she had small breasts, and she liked that. Now, does personal taste mean something is more or less feminist? No. For the longest time, we've been told that there's something inherently problematic about, women with boobs more the size of mine than, say, Anita Sarkeesian's or Carolyn Petit's, petite being the operative word there. And there is something wrong with the preference in gamers for women who look more like me than them. Now, it is fair to say that if there isn't a variety, if every character looks the same, well, that's boring for everybody, right? Like, most people, especially adults, don't want every single character to look the same. I mean, the reason I like the Soul Calibur games, for instance, is there's so much body diversity. And there was a period of time where some video game developers were being lazy and insisting that it was too expensive to create more than one animated female character back in the wireframe days. Now, let me tell you, in indie dev, every animation matters in terms of your budget, but in AAA, no, they've got the money. I mean, since everything's moved to motion capture, it's just a question of mo-capturing, different people who look different. And this is where we first get into the trouble with Abby. Because Abby, for people who don't know, Here's Abby. This is the most popular screen of her, looking very menacing, and I think that's a bit of an issue, so I'm going to use a more neutral image. There's Abs, looking more friendly, shall we say, more welcoming. The issues initially begin that Abby is not, we see Giancarlo Esposito in Far Cry 6, and it's Giancarlo Esposito. It's his face, it's his body. That's the dude. Abby is actually an amalgam of 3 different women in the performance. The face was a developer at Naughty Dog, who I'm not going to say her name too much because she's just a programmer or some sort of employee, and she didn't sign up for this. The voice was provided by Laura Bailey, who you see here. Laura Bailey is very, very pretty, and you'll notice very teeny tiny. Well, the person who provided the abs in Abby is a woman by the name of Colleen. I believe her last name is pronounced Focht. Yeah. And this looks more familiar. Now, I don't know why they just couldn't have used her face. There's absolutely nothing wrong with her face, But this is how most people sort of recognize Colleen Focht. Okay, real woman, she looks like that. End of story, right? No, it's not so fast. This is where I talk about my own sort of background. Some of you may know I used to do modeling. I did pinup modeling, but I also did some modeling because of the TV show I was on. I did some cosplay modeling. So I'm familiar with what you have to do to be photo ready in diets, and it's friggin' miserable, and I don't do it anymore. I also had members of my family who were competitive bodybuilders and figure models. And so that world, I didn't know a human being could eat 40 pounds of broccoli, but the things, bodybuilding and similar things, figure modeling, these sorts of photo shoots, transformation photo shoots, are all about tricking the body into doing things that it's not designed to do. And the problem with the depiction of Colleen Focht in, I hope I'm saying her name right, is that even Colleen Focht doesn't look like that all the time. Don't believe me, like here again, this is one of the more kind of sickeningly sexualized parts of the game, where Abby has a noose around her neck and they used a scene of violence to lift up her shirt and show her abs. Her very ripped, defined 3% body fat abs. This is an intersection of sex and violence that is really disturbing. There was no need to lift her shirt up in the gratuitous way they did. More on that in a bit. But even Colleen Focht doesn't look like that all the time. You'll see that here. I managed to find a training video. Now, the one thing you'll notice is she's retaining a lot more water. Do you notice that her abs, she's still pretty ripped, right? But her abs aren't as cut. There's less muscle definition. And this is when she's actually working out. This is when she's actually doing the movements required. I'm sorry if it's a small screen and it's hard to see. This is the best image I could give. But do you notice how her arms are not even as defined as they are here? There's more of that, and it's not fat. Okay, I want to be really clear. This isn't fat. This is water. That's what bodies need to hydrate, or you cramp when you're training. And that's the first foul flag on the play regarding Abby being realistic, when even the model they base her on doesn't look like that in her day-to-day life. You're not doing a realistic depiction of even the woman you've used as a body model. And here's how extreme Colleen Focht lifestyle is, okay? Here's a photo from, I believe it's her Instagram, where she's looking significantly smaller, but you'll see very, very defined. But this is some of the radical dieting that people in her line of work do. After competing at the CrossFit Games, I did a 3-day protein deload. Don't worry, I definitely treated myself with lots of treats before going on this adventure. I got a lot of questions about the deload, what it consisted of, and why I was doing it. The reason for the deload for me was to give my gut somewhat of a break. Why does she say that? Because the high protein diets required for that muscle mass, even before things like steroids and human growth hormone, make you very constipated. It's awful. I tried it. Never again. Having just finished up a competition and the intense training leading up to the games, this was the most ideal time to do it. The deload was initially going to be 5 days, but my coach Sam called an audible about halfway through and we cut it to 3 in order to get back to training a little sooner. Not gonna lie, I was not mad about it at all. So the 3 days consisted of eating a vegetarian diet. Breakfast consisted of steel-cut oats. Steel-cut oats are like a freaking staple for bodybuilders. Grapefruit, avocado, with lemon and extra virgin olive oil, vegetable soup broth, and herbal tea. The lunch and dinners were various types of cooked vegetables, including a vegetable soup of zucchini, green beans, carrots, and celery. Mid-morning and mid-afternoon snacks varied between apples, carrots, and avocados. In addition, every morning started with a teaspoon of baking soda and water and a teaspoon of flaxseed oil. One of the toughest parts for me was no caffeine. The first day, I honestly didn't feel the effects, and by the second day, my head didn't feel too good. There was absolutely no working out being done during this deload. My physical activity was limited to going on short walks. Overall, the deload was definitely more challenging than I had expected it. And I was very thankful to be doing it when my schedule was pretty much clear. On the upside, I felt like it was a great reset for my body. I didn't feel bloated, and I slept more and better than I have in quite some time. Okay, so I think you can understand, just based on that little snapshot, how extreme the diets are that you need to be on to look like Colleen Focht and to do what Colleen Focht does, okay? Colleen Focht does not look that way on a diet of burritos and granola bars, like Abby is depicted as eating in The Last of Us 2. And this is where a lot of people, especially people who are clearly very into fitness as they know all this stuff, have commented on how does Abby get the sheer amount of protein-rich calories that is required to build muscle. Now, I want to be clear, okay? There is no evidence that media is the primary reason why people have body dissatisfaction, okay? It's family, it's close friends. This isn't about, oh my God, video games are going to make somebody anorexic or sick or all that stuff. This is about, is the claim accurate that Abby is realistic and gamers just can't deal, right? But it gets better than the fact that I think we've pretty much proven that no, this isn't a realistic depiction of what is realistic to expect in the conditions in the game, okay? One of the big important details is the fact that the bigot sandwiches, so to speak, are steak. And the way it's, the guy, what was his name, Eugene or something like that, is like, here, I made you some sandwiches. They're steak. Their steak is an indication that that's somehow, a valuable resource. And you do see that it's like old fashioned butchery, like the cow hanging outside in an old West style thing. So yeah, it seems like the sort of world where you eat what you're given. Even Abby with the wolves, it's cafeteria style, and you eat what they're making that day. There's no evidence that those sorts of specialized diets, it was a big deal that Manny took extra food, right? So it's not realistic, but you guys know I never leave it there. I go one step further. Here's a Shape magazine article, and I apologize for the ads all over the place. It's not a great layout, but 5 common body goals that are unrealistic. Here we go. Again, this is a fitness magazine. Unrealistic goals. Thigh gap doesn't really apply here. V-cut abs. V-cut abs. You saw it here. Fitness magazine, not realistic for most women. You have to start training very early in life. They showed this, that, Pink has really great abs. The lower part, this isn't even totally cut. So, Pink was crazy. Gwen Stefani, before she had kids, she had that going on. But Pink was a gymnast for years, so she likely developed that fit body through early training in life. Now, we've seen Abby earlier in life. She don't look that way. So people who are apple-shaped may never get lean enough that you can see this kind of definition. They can have abs. It'll just be hidden under a little layer of fat. Pear-shaped ladies, on the other hand, have a better shot at this look since their fat generally is deposited around their hips. Now, Abby is not pear-shaped. Abby definitely not pear-shaped. Abby's body type would actually be considered, if she had any fat deposits, apple-shaped, because she's thick in the waist. That's what it means. You're shaped like an apple. So, the likelihood, she's pretty beanpole in the flashbacks, but realistic? No, we're not in realistic territory here. Here's another one. Toned arms. Look, guys, I'm not shining you on. V-cut abs, toned arms, okay? You can thank folks like First Lady Michelle Obama, Madonna, Kelly Ripa for this one. While women genetically tend to accumulate fat on the backs of their arms, it takes as little as 6 weeks of constant strength training to tighten your triceps and biceps and wave goodbye to bat wings. But this, again, all depends on your muscle fibers. If you have predominantly slow twitch muscle fibers, you're going to be a good endurance athlete, but you can pump iron until you're blue in the face and not develop noticeably defined muscles. Now, I'm the opposite. I do very little and get definition. It was a problem for me in dance because they liked those slow twitch muscles. They want people to look like Laura Bailey. The minute I started, I bulked up like crazy. And so this is going into bad territory here, but they told me I was too heavy and put me on really extreme diets because they wanted me to look like a ballerina when I look more like a linebacker. I look more like Simone Biles and company in terms of musculature than the little ballerinas that they wanted. Story for another time. But it is DNA, right? And those skinny Abby girl flashbacks. She's probably got slow twitch muscle fibers. Slow twitch muscle fibers would actually be desirable in that environment, especially if you're going back and forth between, Jackson, Wyoming and Seattle, Washington on horseback. You want the endurance, right? That beefy stuff wouldn't really be what they're looking for, because so what? Yeah, it looks cool. Doesn't necessarily mean you're strong. You get the muscle definition. But the other thing it says is, you'll notice here, women just don't have enough testosterone on board to get that bodybuilder's frame. Give it time, and even if you can't sculpt flab-free arms, chances are you will see a little difference. Now, you can, look at me. I have some muscle definition, right? I used to cosplay Power Girl for, come on, muscle. There we go. I used to cosplay Power Girl for a reason. And I'm saying, there's a huge difference between, having the bat wings, as people say, and having what Abby's got, which is just not at all attainable for the average woman. And I say that as somebody who look at that. That's crazy. Her shoulder is crazy. And just so you guys know, part of the reason that Abby might look weird to you is that the discrepancy between Laura Bailey's core skeletal structure and Colleen Focht's core skeletal structure. They're not the same height. They certainly don't have the same physicality in many ways. And so when you try to map broad-shouldered lady on teeny little ballerina lady, well, your movement points aren't going to be the same thing. So that's why Abby looks in places like she's walking around like this instead of like this, right? Her shoulders look like sails instead of her people have pointed out that her shoulder blades are too close together because the proportions are off. But let's go on. This unrealistic fitness goals for women. Concave stomach. I shit you not, folks. This may be the worst goal to go after. Fit abs tend to bulge outward. The only way to have a stomach that collapses inward is to lose an unhealthy amount of weight through extreme dieting or, as I learned with modeling, abusing laxatives. Think about what's in your stomach. You've got your intestines, which often have food or air in them, and you may be bloated if you're menstruating, or like Colleen Foch said, because of the high protein diet required for CrossFit. While your belly can look flat, it's unlikely that it would look sunken, even if you're eating normally. I will go back to, where's that image there? It's not totally sunken, but she's exerting herself. That's way, way too flat. It's disturbing. It's not healthy. Okay, so are there any others? Narrow hips and small butt, that doesn't apply to Abby. But it's the same thing. Like, it's all about how your body is proportioned. And that's supposed to be the reason that we want diverse body types, so everyone has a healthy goal. Now, yes, when Abby originally was shown, especially through the leaked footage that I didn't watch, there were a lot of people saying she looks like a man. I had to inform a few people, and I don't think this is a spoiler. Abby's not trans. There's a trans character in the game, but it's not Abby. The issue wasn't how Abby looked. The issue was that, what is this in this setting? Now, some people did go, she's ugly, but let's face it, that's personal preference. That's the opposite of Feminist Frequency on their podcast going, I find her attractive. Personally, I do think she has a cute face. The issue I have with the character is that uncanny valley effect that came about through bashing one woman's face on another woman's body with another woman entirely doing the motion capture. It's never gonna look quite right. And we can't know how many people were responding on sort of a gut level to that uncanny valley thing. Now, some guys don't like muscular women. Neil Druckmann very much does like muscular women. The whole point is it shouldn't matter. It really shouldn't matter if you personally find Abby attractive or Ellie attractive. That's really not the point. And yes, there's always going to be an immature contingent that says stuff like that. They don't speak for everyone. I mean, part of the problem with some of the collectivism that happens in writing about games is instead of going, that's one person's opinion or that's like a subreddit's opinion, but 4 million people bought the game there in the first week, it's hardly representative, and going, oh, this just shows what gamers think. Like, no, it doesn't. Okay? It doesn't. Now, the second part of the problem with Abby is, oh God, her personal life is a disaster. It is one thing to create games about flawed people. But, and I'm going to avoid spoilers because I promised, the things the game does to try to make, they're trying very hard in Abby's portions of the game to make her sympathetic. And you know what? If you don't want spoilers, stop watching now. I'm going to talk spoilers. At the beginning of the game, very early on, Abby kills Joel, setting her up as an antagonist, cueing the revenge plot that eventually gets mostly forgotten while Ellie and Dina and Jesse and so on and so forth engage in like teen hijinks. And then it comes back sometimes when Ellie's going to beat a black woman to death, or Abby shoots Jesse in the face. But then there's this flashback to Abby's youth, and that's how we know she's she's small when she's younger. And her on again, off again, I guess mostly off again relationship with Owen, or as I say on Twitch, Owen, because of Throw Mama from the Train. That's a movie from, I think, the 80s. I don't expect you to know it. But Owen, there's this whole scene with Owen and Abby where he pretends to jump out of a Ferris wheel to get her over her, they actually call it acrophobia. They don't just say she doesn't like heights. They actually give it a phobia territory. You cannot just snap out of a phobia. You cannot overcome a phobia if you try to push someone into just brute force overcoming a phobia like that. You can make the phobia worse, especially things like fears of heights, because a fear of heights can be problems related to the eyes. They can be problems related to the inner ear. It can be balance issues. There are anatomical and physiological reasons why some people might never get over a fear of heights. Don't push people who have a fear of heights to get over their fear of heights. You can really mess them up, like psychotic break territory. Don't do it, okay? I have members of my family who are afraid of heights. I have members of my family who have fear of water. You need to ease them in. It is bad news. So what the game does regarding phobias and Abby's phobias and the portrayal of phobias through Abby is totally unrealistic and frankly irresponsible. That is modeled behavior that can mess people up. And I'm pissed off about that. But furthermore, there's the sex scene, right? Where it's kind of interesting that every woman in the Twitch chat, when that came up, they all went, didn't get her ready, no lube. That is one of the things that porn stars will tell you. Porn is not realism. They do all the prep for scenes before they shoot the scene. It's fantasy. And I quite frankly don't know why they do it that way. There's a whole subset of pornography that's feminist pornography that actually does show that stuff because it's, unfortunately, teenagers are learning about this stuff through porn as if it's sex ed. It's not. But they're like, well, if they're going to watch it, we might as well show them how to do it properly. And so they have more like foreplay and stuff like that, especially considering the circumstances and Abby having almost been almost hung and ligature marks around her wrists and all that stuff. I guess we're supposed to believe she's into the rough stuff, but a lot of women's bodies, when they suffer that sort of trauma, shut down. That's the problem with the Mel and Dina pregnancy things, right? Like when there's enough of a physiological shock to the system, this is a really awful metaphor, I apologize, but especially early on in a pregnancy like Dina, the body just goes self-cleaning oven. You are not in a position to bear children right now. We're not going to give you this thing. And so the unrealistic physiological resiliency. Now, does it happen? Yes, women give birth in war zones and all that stuff. They're not fighting zombies in that war zone. So is it possible? Yes, but again, realistic isn't about the exceptions that prove the rule. It's about the rule, and that's where rape myths about that are connected to that and everything like that. We're not talking about one scary evening, one traumatic event. We're talking about prolonged lack of food, lack of proper hygiene, lack of proper hydration, violent encounters that involve zombies jumping on her back and you need to run over and rescue her. That's the other dumb thing that Abby is more capable of fighting off monsters that Ellie is immune to than Ellie is. Like, long story short, Abby is not a realistic character. She isn't. Just because you can point to one or two examples of it has happened or somebody is that way, let's face it, he had to combine 3 different women to get that character in the first place. That's not a mark of realism. So therefore, the argument that Abby is a realistic character is false. The argument that gamers have a problem with her realism is false. And this is why I wanted to talk about it. Because it's really, really important that we talk about this stuff. We talk about the realities of anatomy. We talk about the realities of physiology. Again, yes, there are cases where it's possible. But, there's a part in the game where Abby takes a hammer to the head and is totally fine. No concussion, nothing like that. That's not realistic. Like, it's just not. Various elements of the game are not realistic, and just because, people can cite instances where it has happened under extenuating circumstances, that's like the exceptions that prove the rule, right? So I think we've pretty much unequivocally been like, this isn't realistic. Abby's not realistic. Therefore, the problem gamers are having with her is not that she's a realistic character. Can we say that some gamers got mad because it's catering to Neil Druckmann's fetish instead of their own? Yes, that is potentially accurate in individual cases. But across the board, gamers having trouble with a realistic character is just not possible if the character is not realistic to begin with. So I wish I could have gone more in depth with certain things, but YouTube doesn't allow me, which sucks, because there are parts where I'm already thinking, they're going to misconstrue that, but I don't have the time to redo this video because I got other things to do, like playing the game on Twitch. So if you like this sort of stuff, help monetize my grief and suffering, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com, Leanna K. I am a real woman, even though I'm sometimes unrealistic. Thanks for watching.